All right. Hello, my friends. Welcome to a new day in the Joe Martino show. Well, potentially new day. We've actually done this before, somewhat, in fact, very infrequently. I think it's been maybe 3 years
It
since you've been here.
probably, yeah,
Yeah.
it's been
And
a
so
while.
today, my wife joins me. I'm going to let her introduce herself. And then we're going to have a fun conversation about something that's been in the news recently and that, quite frankly, I'm living. And so I'm going to let her do most of the talking. Well, we'll see about that. Erica, why don't you introduce yourself? Try to do it in 30 seconds or less. Go.
First, you are not gonna let me do most of the talking. But anyway, hi, my name is Erica Martino. I am a licensed counselor, and I'm also a certified forensic trauma specialist and certified forensic interviewer. What does all that mean? Mainly means I just love treating trauma. It's what I've been doing most of my career. I see people of all ages. My current youngest client is 2, and I've seen people up to 85. Very passionate about also helping families who are navigating the court system within family law.
And the part that she left out there is that she is my wife for almost 28 years, the best 28 years of her life.
Best.
We've known each other for 30. We're actually coming up here in a few months. I was walking down a sidewalk at college and I hear this. I hear you're looking for me. And then the rest, as they say, is history, which has some twists and turns. All right. So today I want to talk to you about parental estrangement. And one of the things that we see a lot in our field is people struggling to figure out how do they talk to their parents. Certainly, parental estrangement is on the rise. If you haven't seen it yet, dear listener, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Fox News, CNN, whatever MSNBC calls themselves now, they all published an article that said, hey, parental estrangement is up, and they blamed the therapist, right? And what was interesting to me, Erica, was in the article, it actually said that 30% of the parents who have been cut off blame the therapist,
Mhm.
who I can guarantee you they've never talked to, right? Like, because that would be against the law.
Mhm.
So I thought that was interesting. And I do want to admit that there are therapists that probably jump to that quickly. I don't talk about this a lot in public, but I am actually estranged from my father and my sister. And so I don't talk about that a lot in public. I want to be really careful in today's episode to not like talk out of my wounds, so to speak, and talk more out of my scars. But that was not a decision that we came to lightly, but it was one that we came to a little over a year ago.
Mhm.
And so we're going to talk about that today. I think it's going to be an exciting time. And I imagine we'll have a lot of points where we agree and maybe a few where we don't.
A few points that we agree and disagree. That's true. First, can we just touch on you portray me as having this like Trisha Yearwood Southern twang, like, "Oh, I hear you're looking for me," and I
That's
do
like
not talk
not
like that.
Trisha Yearwood. It sounded like Punky Brewster met Tennessee.
Punky Brewster,
You looked like Punky Brewster at the
no.
time. Can
So
somebody find me a 1996 picture of Erica?
Okay. So first, I need to touch on that before we get into this whole conversation. But I do agree with you so far on what you've said that yes, these news articles are blaming therapists for this growing trend. I also agree that they have not heard the other side of the conversation. And I can't tell you how many times I hear a client repeat back, like, you said, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, I don't even talk that way. So you never know. It could be an
Right,
excuse. Yes,
right.
a therapist could have said it. That's not the point of this conversation today. The point of this conversation, I think, is going to be, if you can disagree with me, we're going to discuss when should you be estranged from your family and when shouldn't you. And to be honest, it should be little
Right,
times that
right. Yeah,
you're
there's certainly
estranged from your family.
right. Yes. I think one of the things that one of the most terrifying phrases I hear in the room is, well, I was just telling my friend what you said. And then I'm always like, oh, well, tell me what I said.
Right.
Because a lot of times, and we do this as humans, we interpret what someone says as what they said. And that's
Absolutely.
not the same. Okay, so let's just get into this. There's an article. I've talked to you a lot as my wife about how I've said that people are going to start coming for therapy, right? We have more money, more time, more energy, more resources devoted to therapy.
Mhm.
And by and large, the outcomes are not what we predicted they would be if we could get all those resources.
Mhm.
We have a lot of therapists that have bought into the client is the expert in their story. One of the dumbest phrases I've ever heard. We have a lot of therapists who have bought into the idea that whatever the therapist wants to do, they should do, unless it brings overt physical harm to them. And even then, sometimes I think about the woman in Seattle Seattle whose client identified as blind. And so she helped her pour Clorox into her eyes so that she could be blind. Like, that's insane. So let's talk about this. Where do you want to pick up on the conversation?
Well, I mean, you disclosed in the beginning we have been personally dealing with this. And I think one of the things that actually helped me was reading a book about toxic families. And it was from a woman who has experienced it herself. And she talked about like her experience and like the different personality types that you may or may not grow up with. And what are the outcomes of that? She has a PhD. And there is like a lot of research that says, like, hey, if you're growing up with a narcissistic parent, if you're growing up with a sociopathic parent, like the chances that they're going to change is not high. So then you get to decide what you're going to do with that.
Right.
And I think, but those are, you probably know the percentages more than I do. Those are the outliers, right? The ones that, hey, we're just disagreeing about sports or we're disagreeing over how to raise my child. Those are also ones that people want to just cut off their family. And
Right.
I don't agree with those. I do agree when you have the toxic parent that there needs to be a conversation about either really, really good boundaries or maybe an end to that relationship.
Yeah, I think clearly the research would show that the number one thing currently that people are, stopping talking to their parents about is politics. There's a huge, really, all the way from Gen X all the way down to college age students who have cut off their family, a huge percentage, because they voted for Trump. And certainly that would reflect society. I was just talking to someone this week, and he was lamenting the idea that, when we were kids, he said, you used to be able to tell people, when we were kids, you used to be able to tell people who you voted for. And if they disagreed, okay, you would talk about why you disagreed. Now it becomes it becomes a like, well, that's a moral issue. I can't vote. I can't be your friend. Conversely, it doesn't run the other way. Interestingly enough, people who vote for Trump are not cutting off their parents. Do with that statistic whatever you want. That's just the numbers. But it certainly is politics. Not so much sports that I know of. I don't know if you're just playing it safe there or if you know of stories. But there is a lot of politics. And of course, then there is a lot of gender identification issues, right?
Yes, it just happened too.
Where people are like, hey, my pronouns are this. The parents refuse to use them. And I think some of that stems from the fact that we have labeled disagreement abuse.
Mhm.
Again, coming back to therapists, I think the world's going to come for therapy at some point because a lot of our colleagues have labeled disagreement abuse.
I had a young and teenage client who she was like going to be done with her parents and it was all over. She considered herself liberal and she got her resources from what's the liberal one? I don't even know, CNN.
Yeah.
But all mom listened to was Fox and mom was just super judgmental of everyone. And she was wrong in being such judgmental because she should love everyone. And she eventually like stopped seeing me because I pointed out to her, so you're your mom,
Yes.
right? Like
Yep.
you're just on the other extreme. And so you think
Yep.
you're right. Well, your mom also thinks she's right in her
Right.
politics and what she believes. So why do you get to be the
Right.
moral high ground here?
Yeah. And so I think one of the things that we do is we need to kind of distinguish between what is abuse, what isn't abuse, and what are we going to do with that, right? Like because just this morning I read people the day we're recording this is going to kind of be a hot shot. We're recording it just a few days before it goes up. I read two people having a conversation about the recent Fauci trials, and I completely disagree with their opinion. Their statements, I think, were disingenuous, and they're not family. I can't cut them out of my life, right? Like they're people I knew years ago, and we stay in contact through social media. But it does bring up the interesting question: why do you think we're not teaching people to tolerate a difference in things like politics? Because now every political position is a moral issue, right? Like, and you'll hear people say, well, I'm not a one issue voter, but then they tell you they're one issue. And I always find that to be fascinating.
I think that we all think we're right. And to be honest, I think parents need to look back. If you have a kid who they're constantly right and what they believe is the only way, you kind of have to put the camera back on yourself. Like, why do they act that way? Why do they believe this?
Yes.
It was taught to them.
Yes.
And their family systems, just like I talked about
Yes.
the client that I had. I
Yes.
mean, I've had several of those, like, and it's like, "Ooh, apple doesn't fall too far from the tree." Your
Right.
parents are
Yes.
also act the very same way you do. So how do we have healthy relationships? I think first we have to realize, like, we're allowed to have different opinions with somebody and
Yeah.
disagree
Yep.
and know when to shut a conversation down. You and I don't agree with
No,
everything.
I tell people this all the time because I'm always like, I don't understand people who feel like they have to agree with somebody on everything.
Right.
I'm always like my wife and I, we don't agree on everything. And there are some things we passionately disagree on that are very important to us.
Hey, how do we go about these conversations when we disagree? And when, number one, but then when do we need to step back and say, like, I also think, I feel like society is like these two extremes that either
Yes.
I
Yep.
have to be having Sunday dinner with you every week or I have to completely cut you out of our life. And there's
Right.
like a very much an in between that is acceptable. And I think honestly, that's where we should spend our time today is like, I don't think
Yeah.
people know the difference. And
Yeah.
like, how do we have a healthy in between and what does that look like?
Yeah. Absolutely. I agree. I think one of the things, you know, when I talk to parents, like, well, my kids believe this, my kids, I'm like, okay, well, who cares, right? Like my kids, I love all of our kids. I don't agree with everything they say.
Mhm.
We just talked this week about something that one of our kids is doing. I was like, that does make zero sense to me.
Right.
It make what they're doing, even though like I can't follow the logic. But she's an adult, and
Mhm.
it's her choice, right? And so I think what I think what you're referencing there is, and we talk about this a lot in therapy, is expectations,
Yes.
right? And people have these expectations. Well, we've got to be somehow the Brady Bunch meets the Reagan family,
Right.
right? And we're gonna have Sunday brunch every Sunday, and we're gonna get together on Wednesday, and every Thanksgiving, and every Christmas, and every Easter. We've got a vacation together. Uh, Maybe run me through the process of how you walk clients through the difference between somebody abusing them and just having a disagreement. And what's the conversation look like? But let's just start there.
So the difference between someone abusing you and you just disagreeing with someone. So to me, somebody abusing you is abuse doesn't just start when you're older. By the way, typically there is a long pattern, unless like a brain tumor all of a sudden shows up in a parent or something along that nature. But
TBI,
yeah, or a TBI.
sure.
But we're gonna just start with like it's
Stroke.
been a childhood thing, right? You have been being you're being gaslit. I know that's a huge psycho term, but it is a term in psychology. They're gaslighting you. They're tearing you down all the time. They're screaming at you and yelling at you. They're belittling you. They're telling you how you're wrong all the time and you can't have an opinion and it just has to be blind obedience as an adult. All those are strong red flags. And then also when they turn it on you. I can't tell you
Yeah.
how many you ask me like my clients, I can't tell you how many clients when they do confront a parent, the parent will do things like, "Oh, I'm just the worst person ever. I don't even deserve to be your parent."
Yeah.
Or
Yes.
my favorite is, "Well, you do it too. You blah
Yes.
blah blah." Those are both very unhealthy
Yes.
responses.
Yeah.
That's not going adult to adult. That's not listening and creating a healthy relationship with
Yes.
someone. And it's not like this happens one time. Like you should be someone who regularly offers grace and invite your parent to a healthy relationship with you. But when it continues, it is abuse. I don't care how old you are. I don't care if you're in your 40s. If you have a parent that is still throwing hands at you and belittling you and tearing you down and screaming at you, they're abusing you. And nobody should be abused.
Right. And if they tell you that they think you're wrong, that's not abuse. I hear that's probably the one that I hear the most from people. Yeah, I feel like my mom's abusing me. Okay, well, tell me about it. And well, what she's doing is she told me I was wrong, this thing that I want to do with my kid, right? Or whatever. Now there are some things like, there's one, I did not actually work with this client. Somebody I knew on the on the east side of the state called me, and they were working with a client who decided to cut off the parents because they didn't want the parents to kiss their kid because the kid couldn't give consent.
Mhm.
And they were threatening to sue him because he didn't affirm that. And he was like, "So what do I do?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know, get a lawyer." I mean, because to me that's a little wild. On the flip side, I don't know why the grandparents couldn't. I mean, they are their kids. You need to honor their wishes,
But to
and
me,
you got to live in that tension.
that's not a cutoff. That's not a boundary. So you can say, then you're only gonna be able to see your grandkids when I'm around.
Well, they
Or
wouldn't. They would still kiss him. Like that's what they did, cut him off because.
I
Right.
mean, at some
Exactly.
point, if you're not
Yes.
going to respect a boundary that has been
Yes.
placed with you
Yes.
and you feel it's a matter of protecting your children,
Yes.
then you do have to make that decision.
Yes. Where it gets interesting is because the therapist said to me, "Well, what about if the parent wants to argue with them?" I'm like, to me, I don't understand a society that can't argue. You argue
Right.
with me all the time. And no, you argue with me. I don't understand that, and that's where we're at.
Hmm.
And one of the things that I tell people is if you decide to cut your parents off, you need to know that comes with really strong emotional consequences for both of you. And if you don't feel emotional consequences from it, you need to check what's going on in your soul and your heart.
It shouldn't be this easy thing to just do and you move on with your life. They were your parents.
Right. Yes.
And
Yes.
it's
Yes.
like there does come this like, hey, how do I honor my mom and dad even when I
Yes.
don't agree with
Yep.
them? And how do I still love
Yep.
them? And how do I this is like a complex conversation that again, back to the original post that we're responding to, isn't just as simple as like, oh, all these therapists are telling you to cut off your
Right,
parents.
right,
Like,
right.
no.
Yes. And I do think we probably have to address that. Like, there are bad therapists in our field. We have to be
Mhm.
really careful how we say that. The code of ethics tells us to be very careful in how we say that. But there are bad therapists. There are therapists that don't belong in the field. There are therapists that get in the field to fix their own messes, right? Like, I get all of that.
Mhm.
I think the thing that I found most interesting about the article is, well, 30% of the parents that were cut off.
Mhm.
So I want to ask the researchers, did you follow up with the kids? Because I didn't read the full thing because I hit a paywall.
Mhm.
But when I read the abstract, you didn't mention that.
Mhm.
And good research, this is one of the ways that I think research has been hijacked in
Mhm.
modern society. Because good research says, if okay, so 30% of the parents think that, but then I need to go talk to the kids that did it, as many as I can, and find out. So I need, like, might not be the same kids, right? But then there should be, and they're just, that doesn't look like that research was done.
Mhm.
I remember actually sitting in this room because we record this in a therapy room. I had a client tell me that he had cut his parents off, and I asked him. I said, "What are you going to do when your kids cut you off?" Because essentially, he cut his parents off because of a disagreement,
Mm.
a disagreement actually over a holiday, and not even who was going to spend the holiday, but what the holiday meant and how much he felt his parents should spend on his wife.
Mm.
They didn't spend as much on his wife as he thought they should have. And he starts screaming at me, "I'm not going to back off of this." And I was like, "Oh, I'm not asking you to. I'm just asking you to consider what's going to happen when your kids don't feel like you're spending enough on them and they
Mhm.
decide to cut you off," because his kids were little at the time. You know, and those are some of the consequences that I think people don't think about much.
Is to think through actually like, would I want this done to me one day?
Yes.
Do I
Yes.
want to risk? I know you and I talk about this a lot, like the relationship
Yes.
that we have with our kids because they watch us and they could
Yes.
do exactly what we do.
Yes.
One of the things our kids point out to us when we have these conversations is like, but dad, you're a really good dad and you don't treat us the way that you've been treated. And that is also a fair point to consider is like people do change. That's Joe and I preach that all the time. Like you can change. That's the story of life is you
Right.
can change. And so giving that room that like people can change. But if they don't, and circling back to like, and if they're the options like I don't want to cut them out, then what can we do? I tell people all the time because they all live in the same towns. A lot of them like all live like 2 miles from each other. Well, I can't get away from them. Well, why can't you? Well, everyone is so busy. You don't have to have Sunday dinner every week. You don't have to feel obligated to go to your cousins and nieces' birthday parties and to all the sporting events. You can say
Uh,
like, "Hey, I'm going to limit my interactions with my family to X amount of times," and that's
Yes.
an in between versus just cutting someone out.
I think one of the things that I'll tell people all the time, and it catches them off guard. I'm like, you don't actually have to vacation with your family. Like, we have a family tradition. We go camping X amount of times in a summer, and everybody comes. Our oldest daughter got married. She didn't come to one of the camping trips. Our youngest daughter got a boyfriend as an adult. She didn't come to one of the camping trips.
Mhm.
Right? Like, you don't have to go. And so I think the first kind of response to disagreement is understanding, is this a disagreement? Is it abuse? Is it a true disrespecting of boundaries,
Mhm.
which is a super muddy thing. We could probably do a whole episode on that.
Mhm.
And then, or is it some level of, okay, we just need to limit our interactions, right?
Mhm.
Maybe we're just going to text most of the time. Maybe we're going to use something like Marco Polo most of the
Mhm.
time. right? Where it's basically you make a recording, you send it to the person, they record and send it back. By the way, we're not sponsored by Marco Polo, but if you want to sponsor me, feel free to reach out. Um, so there are those things that we look at, and then when a person decides to, like, and as you mentioned, like, my kids essentially told me make this decision a lot sooner than I did. And one of the things that I said to them was, I don't ever want to teach you that you quit on family, right? And I want to be really careful here. I know, like, I thought about this. Do we talk about this? My family can't give you their side of their version of the story. They wouldn't be hard to find if you're really interested. I'm sure you could find them. It would probably be illegal for me to publish their phone numbers for you to reach out to them. So I won't do that. But you can get their side of the story. I don't care. But let's talk about what is a good way if someone decides, okay, I have to do this, and it's important to them to leave open some sort of window for reconciliation. What does that look like?
I think that looks like I think first an apology, and someone needs to take ownership of how the relationship broke down. Like,
Okay, can I
hey,
just interrupt you for a minute?
absolutely.
So I guess what I'm asking is if the person listening is going to decide to stop talking to their adult parent,
Mhm.
what does it look like for them to do it so that they can leave the door open? So you're saying that they should, because it sounds like you're saying the parent that needs to apologize should
Oh,
apologize,
I,
right? I'm talking
yeah.
about from the person making the cutoff.
I think they need to express like why they're doing it versus just cutting the person out. Sometimes, to be honest, you that's not even an option to just have the conversation. Sometimes you just have to do it and you can't. And here's
Right.
why. Because depending on who you're dealing with, I mean, we haven't talked about my story because it's not a parent, but I had to cut my brother out of my life. And I never had a conversation with him of like, hey, I'm done with you. I mean, I probably had uttered those words so many times in my life. But it just came to a point where having a conversation with you about it isn't going to change anything because you are who you are and you have made the choices you've
Right.
made your entire
Right.
life. And at that point it had been 40 some years of this. Like, enough is enough, right? And
Right.
so there
We're
was no
talking criminal
conversation to
activity,
have,
and yes,
right?
yep,
With your parents, you might need to say like, "Hey, I'm going to stand up for myself and I'm not going to be treated this way anymore. And I'm not going to let you talk to me this way. And I'm going to no longer have a relationship with you." I think that's healthy to do. I think it actually empowers the victim of abuse to be able to finally say like, "Hey, I'm going to stand up for myself for once." And I know it doesn't always feel good, but it's the right thing to do if you can do that. And it might even
yeah.
have to be through a text, to be
Yep.
honest.
Yeah. And I think, so what I usually tell people is if you're really going to do this, there needs to be, this is what's going on. If it's possible, this is what's going on and this is why. And this is how we move forward. Right. So like, hey, you started swearing at me for no good reason. And I've told you before, I'm just not, nobody else in my life talks to me like that. Right. So we need to stop. And to the point where I think you started to go in the beginning of this part was really all the parent has to say is I'm sorry, but then change. Like not just, oh, I'm sorry, I'm the worst parent ever. I know, I just can't help it, right? All that stuff. But then for the person setting the boundary of like, okay, like, hey, look, we're done talking. I think you do need to be prepared that it's probably going to get flipped on you. Oh, I was just bugging you. I was just joking. You're too sensitive,
Mhm.
right? Or as you mentioned before, the whole manipulation of I'm just the worst parent ever.
Mhm.
I forget who I was just talking to. It wasn't a client who told me that's what their mom does.
Mhm.
Uh, whenever they're challenged on anything. Oh,
Mhm.
I'm just the worst parent.
And really what they're doing when they do that, just so everybody knows, is they're trying to honestly dismiss
Manipulation
you. And they're
and
trying to
manipulation.
manipulate you. And they're
Yes, yes,
making the conversation go about how you feel to
yes,
about them again.
yes,
And that gets old after a while. Whether you're in a
yes,
marriage who they do that, or if
yes,
it's with your parent, it gets old. And you eventually get to what we call contempt, which is the worst place to be, where I just don't care. I don't want to have a conversation with
right,
you. Because no matter what I say, it's going to be turned about how you were wronged. And that's just, it's
yes,
not okay. That is not healthy
yes.
communication.
All right. Hey, listen, thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this show, please share it with your friends. I can't tell you how much that would help us in accomplishing what we're trying to accomplish. You can find us on Facebook. We're pretty easy to find there if you search our names. On TikTok, I am Joe Martino. Erica LPC, some number. Yeah,
I think
you'd
it's
find her.
Erica LPC or
No,
Marti.
it's Erica LPC, I think 322. But you can find some interesting videos there. We have Swing Time, where we sit on a swing in our front yard and discuss life
I was gonna say, I
And-
think you should elaborate on that one. We have swing time.
Looks like it's going to be a good day for me. Anyhow, thanks so much for listening. We'll catch you next week.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please share with a friend. And hey, give us that rating in your podcast store. Until next time, change possible.